Lawless, one of our superstars. So Kay, you've been busy on the weekend?
I have, very busy. I had 8 opens and they're all very, very well attended.
So what's the market doing now?
We've got a shortage of good quality stock on the market, so if you're thinking about listing, now's a good time to do it before we get too close to Christmas, because there is huge buyer demand out there currently.
Just on that, Kay, what's extraordinary this year as opposed to last year is that we were, as we mentioned before, running at about 50 open inspections on a weekend. This year, last weekend, was just over 1,500 opens. Now, what do you put that down to?
Well, I think what's happening compared to last year is we're actually turning over the stock very, very quickly. And last year, the properties were actually staying on the market for a lot longer period. So with the turnover, it means that there's not as much available and the buyers are out there buying, which is indicated by our huge clearance rates last weekend at auction.
So with 80-something% clearance rate this week, up from the 30s and 40s this time last year.
That's right.
Plus the fact that there's fewer properties coming into the market.
Exactly.
Do you think this last 6 weeks between now and this sort of November period, which is the peak time, what do you think? I mean, you're in the field, what do you think?
I really believe that if you're thinking about selling, now's the time to do it. We don't know what's going to be happening in the future with the talk of increased interest rates, and it is a key time. We've seen more interstate transfers than we have for a long time. Certainly there weren't very many floating around last year with the GFC and the uncertainty with companies. So there's a lot more interstate buyers. So if you're thinking about selling, it's really important to not leave it till too close to Christmas.
Just on that countdown to Christmas, Kay, because a lot of the viewers wouldn't actually be thinking it through, there's about a 1 to 2 week to get the property from let's sell it to on the market, you know, by the time that you do the photographs and brochures and the marketing. And then you've got probably a 3 week period if you were to auction it, or a 3 to 4 week period as say a selling period.
Yes.
You know, the timeline's pretty tight, isn't it, for an 09 sale?
It is, but there is still time to do it if you're thinking about it. So it's just a matter of actioning it if you're thinking about putting your property on the market, so that you can take advantage of the fact that we do have the time still.
Now, just a bit of a question that I'm interested in. You used to be a bit of a specialist in the boom of, I mean, you're a specialist anyway, but you're an absolute specialist at selling off-market to people who are on our database. Can you achieve that at the moment? Are you achieving that, or is it pretty much everything going on, you know, to the advertisements and so on? Where's it at just at the moment?
Currently, we are still doing our sales to our database, so it's really important that database is utilised. We, with all our properties, do the VIP viewings to our database. I've sold a couple just recently prior to marketing, which has been a fantastic result for the vendors of those properties. They achieved really good prices, well in excess of their expectation. So that database selling is still happening, and happening very, very well.
So nice to return to that. Last spring we couldn't have said that.
No,
look,
that's right.
We've got to keep it moving, but just the front page of the advertiser, Kay, the baby boomers, for those of you that have got today's advertiser, Kay, look like us on the front there.
Unfortunately.
But the thing that's interesting is they're placing or positioning Port Pirie as the next place to rival Victor Harbour on the Copper Coast. So really interesting reading, and for those of you investing in property, maybe just worth keeping a bit of an eye on that. So now, just on another thing, don't forget it is interactive. We've got 3 emails here from people, and let's just answer a couple of the questions of the viewers that have emailed in. So this one's from Michael. He's in Glenelg North. He says or asks, "Hi Toopy, should I accept the first offer that comes in on my property?"
Well, there's an old saying in real estate that your first offer is often your best offer. but it depends on if it's in a range that's acceptable to you, and also dependent on the terms and conditions of the offer. A good negotiator will always contact all the people that have been interested in the property and try and get the best possible price, so it'll give you a very good indication of where that price that you've achieved is sitting in relation to other buyers. So it's a matter of considering all those things and putting them into perspective, and also in terms of your own needs for the sale.
Excellent. There's any interesting articles or anything about property with regard to... we've got a first call coming in. This, I understand, by the way, we'll cut straight to that call. Tim Lawless, he is from Queensland, and let's just take Tim's call. Hello, Tim.
G'day, Anthony. How you going?
Yeah, very good. We're live on TOOP TV, Tim.
Fantastic.
How's the weather up in Queensland, mate?
Oh, it's a little bit dismal today, which is a good thing, actually. We need a bit of rain up here.
Oh, we've been having nothing but rain down in South Australia. So, but today it's beautiful today and sun's shining. So this is where the great Mediterranean climate is down here. Mm-hmm. Now, Tim, I've got Kay Morris, one of our superstars in the TOOP TV, with me on today, and I just wanted to run through and check with you some of your latest reports. The one in particular that I'm interested in is the report that you did into the global comparison of properties and how Australia's fitting. I'm just wondering if you could just run through a bit of that detail, because I know that you're specialising in analysing it. What's happening? What's the difference between overseas and here in Australia?
Well, it's certainly an interesting story, and not just in terms of Australia's property market, but in our economy as well. Australia has really been, I suppose, one of the standouts, or even the standout, in international comparisons. So when we look specifically at Australia's property market, from peak to trough during 2008, we saw Australian property values fall by about 3.8%, based on the RP Data Rismark indices. If you look at other major comparable areas like the US, for example, we saw property values fall by about 25%. In the United Kingdom, property values were down about 23%. In New Zealand, they were down about 10% from peak to trough. And those markets are still well and truly below where they peaked. So even though we have seen a turning in most of those markets, they probably bottomed, but they haven't really started to show any real increases in values just yet. But once again, looking at Australia, what we've seen in the Australian real estate market is we have well and truly surpassed the peaks that from February 2008, and Australian property values are once again at record levels. So far this year, up to August, we've seen property values increase by just under 8% over the first 8 months of the year.
Tim, in terms of South Australia, I know that you're looking at the global situation. How are we performing from what you're looking at in the figures that you're dealing with in the South Australian market?
The Adelaide market has normally been a very strong market, particularly in 2007, when we saw Adelaide property values increase by between 20 and 25%, depending on which market you're looking at. But in 2009, Adelaide hasn't been as strong a performer as the national average. So when I said nationally Australian values went up by about 8% or so over the first 8 months of the year, Adelaide values are up around about 3%. Now that's still a pretty good outcome. But when you look at, I suppose, in retrospect, the strong growth that Adelaide had back in 2007, there is still what we might call a growth hangover that's affecting not just Adelaide, but also Brisbane, which has traditionally been a very strong property market also, where that growth in 2007 is to some extent holding back the resurgence in the market in 2009, with most property investors and most of the action, for want of a better word, really being centred around Sydney and Melbourne.
It seems that the Australian economy escaped the global downturn. Why do you think we escaped the huge downturn that was experienced by a lot of other countries?
Well, there's a number of reasons, and Australia's economy has been almost surprisingly resilient. We didn't slip into recession like most other westernised nations did, even though we came very close to it. And I think part of the saving grace for Australia has been our very strong financial regulatory system. We have have most of our banks are either AA or AAA rated, which certainly sets us apart from the other major Western nations. In addition to that, we're also a nation that's